Welcome to Culture Alchemy, where we do a deep dive into film, TV, music, and the stories and trends lighting up the group chat. We'll discuss what it means, why it matters, and how it shapes us. I'm Antoinette. Each week, we've got pop culture's hottest takes served fresh. We're turning pop culture into pure gold. This is Culture Alchemy. Hey, everyone. So, the Golden Globes were this weekend, and I watched the entire thing live, all 3 hours. I recorded a lot of my reactions as it was happening, sitting on my couch, reacting in real time. Now that I've had a chance to sit with it, and once the afterglow wore off, I wanted to come back to the mic and share what's really stayed with me. So, overall, there were no huge surprises this year, especially on the TV side. A lot of the wins were pretty predictable. The show itself mostly worked. I think Nikki Glazer nailed it. Great job as host. I actually think she was actually maybe even sharper this year, although I know some people disagree. I think she really, skated a very fine line between taking aim at some known targets and going after some low-hanging fruit, and also making sure she kept the show moving, kept it light, not too heavy. Um, Really fine high wire act that she was pulling there in a very sensitive political time too. So I certainly hope they ask her back. Now, that said, a couple of things did feel off to me. So let's get into it. So there were noticeable production issues, and a lot of people have pointed these out online already. But more than that, there were some decisions that kind of made me pause. And one of them for me was Sinners. Now, everyone knows I like Sinners. I've repped for it pretty hard in other videos. Okay, I'll put that bias out there right here. So, no surprises, this is one of my favorite movies of 2025. I know this night was not singularly about Sinners, but I don't think that Sinners was outright ignored, but I do think it was slightly snubbed. And that snub actually tells us something about the Golden Globes themselves, where they're trying to go and where they still seem hesitant. Going into the evening, Sinners felt like one of two real contenders people have been talking about all season. This was a tale of sinners versus one battle after another. These were the films that were consistently being put head to head in conversation. Not because they're similar films, by no stretch of the imagination, they're really not, but because they represent two very different ideas of what prestige looks like right now, what cinema looks like right now. And there were real conversations around Best Picture, Best Director, Coogler versus Paul Thomas Anderson, even if most people, myself included, knew and assumed that PTA had that director race locked. The acting races still felt very much alive for me. Michael B. Jordan playing twins with such a distinct emotional and physical nuance that it genuinely felt to me like two distinct performances. Miles Canton coming in with momentum after winning at the Critics' Choice Awards. The best score also felt like a lock for Ludwig Göransson for Sinners. And this was not a fringe movie. This was a movie that was very much in the conversation. And beyond all of that, all of the hopes people had for a variety of different categories for Sinners was a genre bending film with historic production value, including a sequence that will absolutely live on as one of those how did they do that moments in modern cinema. When you hear Coogler talk about the filmmaking, the precision, the intentionality, it's very clear that this will be a film that will be studied for years. So this is where the night started to feel a little strange. Okay, the Globes had multiple opportunities to meaningfully honor Sinners and repeatedly chose not to, and that's the key here. Okay, the best score, for example, was awarded off air. It was one of the few categories that was awarded off air. That was one of the cleanest, least controversial ways to spotlight the film. And they didn't. No acting wins, no screenplay recognition. And ultimately, the only visible acknowledgement was the Cinematic and Box Office Achievement Award. And we've seen this before. That award previously went to Barbie and Wicked. Basically, it's given to films that were undeniably successful, culturally dominant, and technically impressive, but never really fully embraced in the major categories. So this is not random, it's a pattern. It's a way of saying, we see you, yeah, we get it, we know you mattered, we know people like the movie, but it wasn't really our thing. And we can't really give you awards for other things, right? And with Sinners, I don't think it's just about genre. I also do see a little bit of discomfort with a Southern Gothic vampire film set in the Jim Crow era. It carries historical weight and racial context and metaphor. So even for an international voting body like the Globes, it does hit a nerve. Likely hits a nerve, right? So no, Sinners was not dismissed, but it was carefully contained, and ironically, early press suggested the film would flop. So the idea of giving them the Cinematic Achievement Award does matter. But let's be honest, it functions more like a participation trophy than a full blown endorsement. And outside of Sinners, there were several moments where it felt like the Golden Globes were trying to modernize, but not quite pulling it off. So, for example, the banter between the presenters, I that just that did not work. And I know the irony of saying that as I'm, talking about filming a reaction video myself, but those two just didn't have chemistry. It felt forced and awkward and distracting. And the live polling thing. There was a gambling style clicker that was going on periodically throughout the show. That was another huge misstep, in my opinion. I understand the attempt at the interactivity. I think that's cool. I think, a similar thing was attempted with Nate Brigazzi when he recently hosted an award show and he had a clicker on to suggest how much money was being taken away from a charity as people were spending a little bit too much time giving their acceptance speeches. It was initially really funny, and then it started to become a little bit like almost sinister. This was decidedly less pronounced. I don't think Nikki Glazier necessarily even spoke to it, but the constant interruption with it, I just didn't think that worked. And instead of energizing the room, it just pulled focus away from the awards themselves. And let's talk about the music cues, as I love music, but honestly, it was unhinged. It felt like somebody hit play on like a 2010 Spotify playlist and just let it ride. I thought seeing Stellan Skarsgård, for example, accept his award for Best Supporting Actor for Sentimental Value to Usher's "Yeah," that that was a choice. Okay, and learning that someone told me that for another adolescence when they were playing the yayas off with their heads, that's a really poor choice considering this is a movie where somebody macheted another person. So I thought that was a completely nonsensical choice. But I didn't catch that one, but I just heard about it and thought that's kind of funny. Another production choice I'm still not sure about was the overhead seating map. At first, when I thought, oh, okay, this is interesting. They might go somewhere. Then it didn't. It didn't add context. It didn't deepen the moment. It's something they could have easily, let go of and probably should let go of for next year. The other thing that also stood out to me, as you know, I'm talking about all the things that people made time for in the production and cut elsewhere as they were trying to trim the fat on what is often a very bloated evening. We barely saw any clips from the nominated performances or films. No acting highlights, no reminders of why these people are in the room. The award shows work best, in my opinion, when they reconnect us emotionally to the work. So even a short medley at the beginning would have grounded the night in the art itself. I'll tell you what did work though. As I said earlier, Nikki Glazier. I actually went back and rewatched her monologue, and it really holds up. That Sean Penn joke alone, incredible. The fact she got him to laugh tells you everything, because that's not an easy feat. And the Leonardo DiCaprio joke, what a smart bait and switch. You think, okay, it's obvious. She's going to go for the age gap joke. He likes to date young models. And then she pulls the rug out and she lands on something even sharper that I had to acknowledge had so much truth to it. I mean, beyond his dating life, I don't really know much about Leonardo DiCaprio. So I thought that was a brilliant joke um, because it was truth serum. And please, can we talk about the Nespresso joke? A perfect joke. Perfect, perfect award show comedy there. Specific, visual, observational. I actually laughed out loud when I heard it. Espresso is the can of watery. That's amazing. The Nespresso joke is amazing. So, I mean, Nikki Glazier understands who she can go after, how far she can go, and when to turn the knife into an insight. Let's talk speeches because this really worked for me. Okay. Speeches are prime real estate. You're speaking to industry, you're speaking to the public all at once. And I think there were some great speeches last night that will leave a nice memory in the voters' minds who are now voting for the Academy Awards. Stellan Skarsgård also really stands out to me. His speech for Best Supporting Actor was great. He talked about why seeing films in a theater still matters and what happens when you experience something collectively. And what made that moment really interesting is where he said it. He's in a room full of studio heads and executives. That is huge. And I also noticed that the applause for him was, it was I won't say a smattering, somewhere between a smattering and thunderous. It was, it was acknowledged, respectful, but not thunderous. And that says a lot because when you speak in that room, you're also speaking in front of people whom ultimately are in a position to hire you, right? And so I think that's why speeches, especially now in 2026, make a huge difference. Tiana Taylor, I mean, come on, another highlight. Sincere, grounded, deeply human. Um, was very emotional for me.
To my brown sisters and little brown girls watching tonight, our softness is not a liability. Our depth is not too much. Our light does not need permission to shine. We belong in every room we walk into. Our voices matter and our dreams deserve space.
And Paul Thomas Anderson's best screenplay speech also I thought was fantastic. That struck a chord. Describing writers as magpies, pulling from so many sources, is so true. Great writing isn't originality in a vacuum, in my opinion. A lot of great writing, a lot of creativity is really derivative. We pull from many different sources. It's a synthesis. So I'm glad he acknowledged that as well too, and gave a shout out to some of his muses on the set of One Battle After Another. Then we get into Seth Rogen winning for the studio, and this was awesome. And another one of my favorite speeches, surreal in the best way possible, because he wrote about winning a Golden Globe in season 1 of the studio, and then he actually won one and accepted it from the actors he literally wrote into the show. It doesn't get more meta than that. And then we have Stephen Graham geeking out over Queen Latifah. Oh, it's like pure joy for me. I loved that moment.
You all know exactly who you are, and without you, none of this is possible. So, Queen Latifah, wow, can't believe it.
Getting into the fashion. Okay, one area where the Golden Globes absolutely delivers was the fashion. Okay, um, so many beautiful looks, men and women both brought it that night. Um, Tiana Taylor, okay, 2025, as I said, she was like the moment, right? All year. And she's continuing on with 2026. She looked incredible. That black, I believe it was a Scaparelli gown, was sculpted to her body in a way that I mean, it was defying gravity. It looked so good on her. And then that business in the front and the party in the back with that jeweled, like little detail hanging over her butt crack, flawless. Okay. Also, Kate Hudson, gotta give a shout out to her. She had on one of the most beautiful dresses I've ever seen in my life. It was like this flapper and inspired jeweled number that was just stunning, absolutely stunning. There are so many other standouts as well too. Those two really stood out to me. Jennifer Lawrence as well, wearing Givenchy, this sort of floral thing, sheer naked dress with strategic floral applique. I mean, we've seen this before. Beyonce wore something like this at a recent Met Gala, but the way she wore it, Jen, with that floral sort of shawl slash jacket situation, she looked gorgeous. I know some people were not into this look because it seems so derivative of an earlier look that we saw from the Queen Bee herself and others as well. But yeah, it just other than I think a little bit of a fit issue, maybe in the bust could have maybe fit her a little better. I think she looks stunning. The men also took a lot of risks too. Adam Scott's red Red blazer really shouldn't have worked, but I somehow found that it did. It was giving like circus ringmaster, but it kind of worked for him. And Coleman Domingo, he always understands the assignment, never misses. And then Julia Roberts walks out. When she presented, you felt the gravitas. One of the only standing O's of the night. She looked beautiful as well in a very simple plunging black dress with a statement necklace. And this is a real movie star, a real true to the game, bona fide movie star. Right. Then we got to get to the actual room itself, because I think one of the things that is great about the Globes is that people are sitting in rounds, mingling, drinking, anything can happen kind of energy. It has that feeling of danger. And you get to see, peek behind the curtain and see who's hobnobbing with whom, who knows whom. And there's a viral clip going around right now of Timothy Chalamet and Leonardo DiCaprio. Just a theory I'm throwing out there, but I actually feel like Leo in that moment, it just felt like almost like a quiet passing of the torch. Like Leo's been incredibly low key this award season in promoting One Battle. We have seen him, and we know what it looks like when he's campaigning, when he wants to campaign for an Oscar. And this time around, it feels like he's more or less letting the work speak for itself. Maybe he's just letting the moment belong to others like Tiana, PTA, and in some respect, I do think also maybe Chalamet. Maybe he's aware of where kind of the wind is blowing, and he's allowing that moment to be his. So that exchange between them in that clip felt more like someone acknowledging, like, you know, great job, this is your time. Another really beautiful moment of the night came when Hamlet won for best drama. Um, and Chloe Zhao, a director, shared something that Paul Mescal had said to her earlier that day. Now, he said that making the film made him realize how important it is as an artist to learn to be vulnerable enough to be seen for who you really are, not who you think you ought to be. To give yourself fully to the world, even the parts that you're afraid of, the parts that feel imperfect. And it sounds very simple, but it's actually very hard to do in a increasingly performative culture. So that moment was really powerful for me, and obviously would leave a great feeling for Academy voters going into Oscar nominations. Right? Words linger, speeches matter. I also just want to say Owen Cooper continues to impress me every time he gets up to speak. He's 15, and the composure, the humility that he has, the self awareness he shows is remarkable. He seems deeply aware of how privileged he is to be able to do what he does while still carrying real confidence. And it genuinely makes me happy to see a young man navigating this type of fame without ego. And his phrasing and humor, describing the awards season as an incredible journey his family has been put through, whether intentional or not. It felt very British, very wry, very thoughtful. Moments like that remind me why I like watching new talent emerge and how rewarding it can be. You know, I really want to just come on here and just rap about what I saw. So, my big takeaway from this year's Golden Globes was this. While there are clear frontrunners, of course, the award season is far from over. Oscar nominations drop January 22nd, and the ACTOR Awards, formerly known as the SAG Awards, are on March 1st. Momentum can shift really quickly, and some of these Globe decisions are going to they're going to age very interestingly. And what I'll take away most isn't just who won, but the moments where people reminded us why people make art in the first place. Yeah, I also have to give them props for the podcast award and for Amy Poehler, another great speech, getting it rather from Snoop Dogg was kind of a fun moment. And I think it really speaks to the fact that, again, the Globes are trying to expand what prestige looks like and trying to expand their viewership, right? Trying to pull in a more hip, maybe younger audience. Again, on the TV side, I've spoken a lot about film. I'll briefly touch on TV. I know I said, Seth Rogen was a delight in terms of his acceptance speeches, plural. But for the most part, congratulations to the pit, the studio, adolescents, Gene Smart and Michelle Williams. Uh, those were the winners really on the TV side, almost in every single category. It was also shocking to see White Lotus just sitting there getting shut out. But if you think about when that came on, it was like a million, years ago. So it just speaks to the quality of the TV that was on this year. Nothing shocking there. Another thing that came up, some controversies throughout the evening, where people were kind of talking about Nikki Glaser and her Rob Reiner tribute. She paid a little nod with a Spinal Tap hat at the end of the show. I personally think it was actually a very nice moment, and she took advantage of the space that she had. Actually, ironically, I think Rob Reiner would probably really have liked the way that she um, gave him a little send off at the end there. Another thing that people were really upset about, I heard chatter about this online, is Judd Apatow making the comment, the joke of about the hard to pronounce names in the envelope for the Best Director nominees. Of course, he then announced Paul Thomas Anderson, um, maybe perhaps a little bit to the chagrin or annoyance of foreign directors who were also in attendance that day. Um, and yeah, maybe it was a little bit in poor taste, but I actually looked at Joaquin Trier, who was nominated for Sentimental Value. He seemed to laugh a little bit. Janar Panaf, who directed It Was Just an Accident, he seemed a little bit less enthused. But one thing that was definitely disrespectful, I thought when the secret agent director was talking about the win for the best non-language English film, he was the only one throughout the entire ceremony who got played off with the music. The music came on almost immediately after he started speaking, and I thought, ooh, that's a real bad look, especially since we're making time for dance numbers that, to be honest, were probably the low point of Nikki's whole evening. She didn't really need to do that. There were a lot of things that could have been cut out to allow for that, or to allow for maybe Ludwig Göransson to come and accept score for Sinners. So I think there were some interesting choices that were made. That one I thought was like, yeah, it's not going to age very well. I think that was a little bit disrespectful. Um, and honestly, I think at this point too, I gotta say, Huntrix, you're almost certainly going to win an Oscar, okay, for Golden. I'm glad that it got its flowers for both the K-pop Demon Hunters for animated feature and for song for Golden. You guys are going to have to tighten it up when you get up to accept that award. That went on a bit too long. I hate to be that person, but since I am giving you the full breakdown here, that stood out to me too. So there were moments where I felt like more time was given, obviously, to others and taken away from some of the more maybe less prestigious uh, awards. So, yeah, all in all, I think actually it was really a great show. They showed us an institution that is trying to stay relevant, experimenting with tone and format and categories while still holding, I think, pretty tight boundaries around what kind of art they're willing to fully champion. And, Sinners didn't lose the night because it wasn't good enough. It was managed because it pushed against those boundaries. And so now the real test begins with the actors, with the Academy, and with what happens when different voting bodies get their chance to have their say. I'll definitely be watching closely when the Oscar nominations drop on January 22nd, and let me know your thoughts. Was Sinners snubbed, or did the Globes get it right? Who were your standouts from the night? Who did you enjoy watching? Who got you verklempt with their speeches? And what movies are you now excited to go check out? Or TV for that matter, because the Globes are, a TV film sort of extravaganza. So please as always, subscribe. Get at me at culture_alchemy. Let me know what you thought of the evening. What were your favorite moments from the ceremony? And did Sinners get snubbed? Do you think that the Globes got it right? Love to hear any and all of this. And of course, as always, I want to thank you for joining me. And until next time, Alchemist, stay curious.